Are you ready to witness a moment so shocking, so unforgettable, that it will completely change how you see humility, kindness, and true greatness? Imagine this. Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's most beloved and respected actors, standing silently at a U.S. Navy base, only to be humiliated in front of hundreds of officers. A petty Navy officer laughs, dumps water on him, and orders him to leave as if he were no one. But then, something happens that no one expected. Tom Cruise steps forward. What followed was not just a confrontation. It became a lesson for the entire world about dignity, respect, and the quiet strength of true heroes. And today, you're going to live it with me, detail by detail. Stay with me until the very end, because what Keanu Reeves did that day will shake you to your core. This is not a Hollywood script. This is real. And the message hidden in this story may be the reminder you need right now in your own life, that kindness doesn't need applause, and that true power doesn't always wear medals or uniforms. San Diego Naval Base buzzed with quiet anticipation. Families gathered in pressed clothes, officers in polished uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder, and a heavy American flag flapped in the wind above rows of neatly aligned folding chairs. The event was called Echo Shield, a program created to heal invisible wounds, PTSD, survivor's guilt, and the long road back from war. This was not meant for cameras. No journalists were allowed. This was for them, the veterans, the soldiers, the broken who were trying to breathe again. And yet, in the back of the ceremony, far from the polished rows of power and prestige, a man stood alone. He wore a faded olive-green hoodie, frayed jeans, and boots that looked like they had walked too far and never looked back. He carried no badge, wore no stripes, and introduced himself to no one. He didn't belong, or at least that's what everyone thought, but this man was Keanu Reeves, and in just a few minutes, his quiet presence would ignite a chain reaction that the world would never forget. If you believe stories like this must be told, subscribe right now and share your thoughts in the comments. Not for me, but for you. Because if this message resonates, it means you're ready for more. The truth is, Keanu Reeves never wanted the spotlight that morning. He wasn't there to be celebrated. He wasn't there to give a speech or stand at the podium. He came for one reason, and one reason only. A young Navy SEAL recruit named Marcus J. Dalton, just 24 years old. 2 years earlier, Marcus had stood on the edge of his rooftop with a bottle of pills in one hand and a goodbye message in the other. He was seconds away from disappearing forever. But fate intervened, and it came in the form of a man wearing a coffee-stained jacket and carrying nothing but time and patience. That man was Keanu Reeves. He didn't arrive with therapy books or scripted motivational words. He simply sat down beside Marcus and said, "You don't have to talk, but if you want to scream, I'll sit here and listen." Marcus screamed for hours that night, and Keanu stayed. Then he came back the next night, and the next. For 5 nights in a row, Keanu listened. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't introduce himself as a world-famous actor. To Marcus, he was just a man who cared enough to show up. And in that silence, Marcus began to heal. Now, 2 years later, Marcus was a new man. Clean, focused, ready to tell his story on the stage of Echo Shield. And Keanu had promised he would be there. Not to take credit, not to be acknowledged, but simply to support. But as Keanu stood quietly at the back of the ceremony, blending into the shadows, a sharp, commanding voice cut through the air. A Navy officer in a crisp black uniform, clipboard in hand, strode toward him. His name, Petty Officer Raymond Knox. His tone was cold, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. "This area is restricted to participants and authorized guests," he snapped. Keanu said nothing. He wasn't on the guest list, and that was intentional. He didn't want his name announced or celebrated, but in Knox's eyes, that silence wasn't humility. It was defiance. And in that instant, the seeds of humiliation were planted. Petty Officer Knox stepped closer, his tone sharper now, his posture radiating authority. "Final warning," he barked, and then, in an act that would soon haunt him, he raised his bottle and dumped cold water directly onto Keanu Reeves' shoulder. Ice clinked against plastic, water darkened the hoodie, and silence fell like a hammer across the crowd. Every eye turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Chairs creaked as officers and families shifted uncomfortably. Drops of water rolled down Keanu's collar like accusations, daring him to react. But he didn't. He just stood there, calm, still, unshaken. His jaw relaxed, his gaze steady, his presence radiating quiet strength. Knox, emboldened by the silence, raised his voice for the audience, not for Keanu. "You're not on the list. That's an order. Leave now." His words rang out, sharp and humiliating. For many, it was clear. They thought this man in the hoodie was a nobody, an intruder, maybe even homeless. But Keanu wasn't here for pride or recognition. He gently lifted his duffel bag, brushed the water from the handle, and spoke softly. "I told you, I'm here for Marcus Dalton." The officer laughed mockingly. "Marcus Dalton? What are you, his life coach, his guru? Don't make me laugh." Around them, a ripple of unease spread. Some officers looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared, waiting to see how this man in the hoodie would respond. But Keanu didn't defend himself. He knew this moment wasn't about him. And that's when destiny began to turn. If you believe humility is stronger than arrogance, subscribe right now and comment your thoughts below. Let the world hear from those who still believe in quiet kindness. Knox's words were still echoing when a new voice cut across the ceremony. Crisp, urgent. "Wait." Every head turned. A young man in full Navy uniform, chest proud, eyes alive, strode quickly toward the scene. It was Marcus J. Dalton, the same Marcus who once nearly ended his life on a rooftop. Now, standing tall in dress blues, he froze mid-step, his breath catching in disbelief. "Mr. Reeves!" The name sliced through the air like lightning. Conversations stopped completely. Officers, veterans, civilians. Everyone turned. A wave of realization swept the crowd. That nobody in the hoodie wasn't a loiterer. It was Keanu Reeves. Marcus half-jogged toward him, ignoring shouts from behind. He stopped just feet away, chest heaving. Then, in full military form, Marcus saluted sharply. "Sir, I had no idea you'd come." Keanu smiled gently. "I promised I'd be here when you spoke." Gasps rippled through the audience. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Keanu Reeves? John Wick? What's he doing here?" Knox's face drained of color. His hand dropped from the radio he had raised minutes earlier. All his bravado melted in an instant. But Marcus wasn't finished. He turned to the crowd, his voice trembling at first, then steadying with conviction. "This man sat with me for 5 nights straight. He didn't have to. He never mentioned his name. I would not be alive if not for him. EchoShield exists because of people like him, the ones who listen, who stay when no one else does." And with those words, the humiliation flipped into revelation. One by one, audience members rose to their feet, not for Keanu's fame, but for the truth Marcus had just revealed. A young Marine stood, then an older Army veteran in a wheelchair, then families, civilians, officers, all standing, acknowledging something greater than celebrity. They recognized sacrifice. They recognized humility. Knox stumbled backward, his face pale. His words from earlier, "You're no one," hung heavy in the air, now shattered by the truth. He looked around for an escape, but there was none. Keanu's eyes never hardened. Instead, they softened, filled not with anger, but with sadness. Sadness for the fact that this moment, this place which was supposed to honor healing, had almost turned into another wound. Marcus pressed on, his voice louder now. That man, sitting quietly at the back, funded most of EchoShield out of his own pocket. Not for publicity, not for tax breaks, just so people like me could live. Gasps again. People glanced at their pamphlets, shocked to see Keanu's name missing from every page. He had intentionally erased himself from the narrative. Marcus finished with words that struck like a bell. That's who he is. He doesn't need you to know. But maybe you should. Keanu lowered his head slightly, uncomfortable with the spotlight, but the crowd saw what mattered. Truth. The ceremony was already transformed. No longer routine, no longer formal. Every breath now carried weight. And then the unexpected happened. Behind the canopy, the doors of a black SUV swung open. Out stepped Tom Cruise. Wearing a dark navy suit, aviators tucked into his collar, he moved with quiet authority. His face was serious. He had witnessed enough from afar to understand what had just happened. The crowd erupted in whispers. Tom Cruise, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, walking straight into a Navy base ceremony. He approached the front row, removed his sunglasses, and spoke clearly. I came here today to honor the men behind Echo Shield. Turns out, the man I came to honor was nearly thrown out before the ceremony even started. Every head swiveled. Tom Cruise pointed directly at Keanu Reeves, still damp from the officer's water, still standing humbly at the side. And in that moment, something extraordinary happened. The entire crowd stood again, not for fame, but for recognition of quiet greatness. Keanu did not move. He did not bask in the applause. His stillness was more powerful than any performance he had ever given. The air was electric. Tom Cruise's words still echoed. The man I came to honor was nearly thrown out before the ceremony started. Officers straightened their backs, veterans wiped tears from their eyes, and civilians whispered in awe. Petty Officer Knox stood stiff, his chest rising and falling quickly, shame burning across his face. Every insult he had thrown at Keanu Reeves, homeless, no one, not on the list, now felt like a dagger twisting back at him. And then something even more powerful unfolded. A grizzled Marine veteran rose slowly, balancing on a cane. He faced Knox and spoke in a voice heavy with decades of service. You looked at him, and you didn't see him. You saw what you feared, the unknown, and you spat it out. Knox's eyes watered. His uniform suddenly felt too tight, too heavy. He realized his mistake wasn't just about Keanu. It was about every man and woman he had judged too quickly. Keanu stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the veteran's shoulder. His voice was soft. I'm not angry with you. Healing only happens when you choose to see people. It wasn't a reprimand. It was a truth that silenced the crowd. If this moment touched you, subscribe and comment below. Not for me, for you. Because if Keanu Reeves' quiet strength resonates with you, it means you're ready for more stories that reveal the power of kindness. By the time the ceremony ended, the internet was already on fire. The first video, shaky and raw, showed Knox dumping water on Keanu Reeves. The caption spread like wildfire. Navy officer harasses homeless man. Turns out he's Keanu Reeves. Millions clicked, outraged, inspired, unable to look away. But it was the second clip that truly broke the internet. It showed Marcus speaking at the podium, voice trembling with gratitude, revealing how Keanu had saved his life and funded Echo Shield quietly, without recognition. Gasps from the audience, murmurs of respect, Keanu sitting silently in his damp hoodie. It was all there. And then came the gut punch, the Marine veteran confronting Knox. His words, "You looked at him and you didn't see him," circulated globally. Within hours it became a movement. Hashtags exploded. Veterans, students, parents, all began sharing their own stories of being unseen, unheard, dismissed. It wasn't about celebrity anymore. It was about recognition. It was about learning to see the invisible. The Navy launched an internal review. Knox sat through a disciplinary hearing, regret written across his face. No lawyers, no PR managers, just a man confronted with his own failure. The lesson was clear. The Navy runs on respect, not assumptions. Meanwhile, Keanu was nowhere near the headlines. He quietly visited Marcus and other veterans, bringing journals, socks, headphones, no cameras, no speeches, just presence. A young Marine asked him, "How do you handle being treated like you re-invisible?" Keanu thought for a long moment and whispered, "By seeing others." The line traveled across the internet like fire. By the next morning, the world wasn't talking about an actor. They were talking about a mirror. Then a manila envelope appeared on the commander's desk. No name, no return address. Inside, a handwritten note. "I don't need a medal. I don't belong in headlines. Echo Shield matters not because it fixes people, but because it listens. You don't need to thank me. Just don't forget why it was built. And next time you see someone who doesn't look like they belong, maybe don't check the guest list first." Signed only, K.R. Keanu Reeves never stayed for applause. While journalists scrambled to spin the story and videos of the incident went viral, Keanu quietly packed his duffel bag. He didn't leave through the VIP exit or with an escort. Instead, he walked alone through the service gate, past rows of military vehicles, his hoodie still damp from the water Knox had thrown. Marcus, standing at a distance, watched him go. Keanu didn't wave, didn't stop for pictures. He simply looked back once, nodded, and said softly, "Keep talking. Someone needs to hear it." Those words struck Marcus harder than anything else that day. They weren't advice. They were a command to live. By the time Keanu disappeared into the California haze, Marcus's shoulders were squared, his salute not stiff, but filled with gratitude. He knew he had just witnessed something greater than any medal or promotion. He had seen what quiet heroism looks like. Later, the footage of Keanu leaving circulated. A drone, accidentally capturing his walk across the back lot, showed the man in the damp hoodie and boots leaving without fanfare. The image was haunting. A global icon walking away like any ordinary man, refusing to make himself the center. But that was always Keanu Reeves. Not the superstar, not the red carpet figure, but the listener, the man who showed up when others turned away. And because of that, the legend of Echo Shield grew larger than any Hollywood premiere could ever dream of. While the world praised Keanu, one man sat alone, broken by shame. Petty Officer Raymond Knox found himself outside the counseling building, staring at the same bench where he had humiliated Reeves. No cameras, no applause, just silence and regret. He reached into his pocket and unfolded a small note, slipped to him anonymously. The words were simple. "Healing only happens when you choose to see people." It wasn't signed, but Knox knew exactly who it was from. For the first time in his career, he felt what it meant to misjudge. He had reduced a man to nothing because of clothes, because of appearances. And now, every second replayed in his mind. The water spilling, the silence afterward, the veteran's words cutting into him. Knox volunteered for disciplinary training, not because he was ordered, but because he finally understood. Soon after, he began assisting at Echo Shield's intake desk. No longer an officer barking orders, but a man humbled, greeting veterans who walked in trembling, lost or underdressed. This time, he didn't see outsiders. He saw people, and though Keanu never returned to the base, his presence lingered in Knox's every shift. Quiet, persistent, transformative. The internet had already crowned the event a turning point. The hashtag, you didn't see him, trended globally. But it wasn't just about Keanu Reeves anymore. It was about every invisible act of kindness, every silent presence that carried weight when the world wasn't watching. People shared photos of neighbors mowing lawns for widows, strangers leaving water for migrants, volunteers sitting quietly with grieving parents. All of them captioned, "You didn't see him." In Kentucky, a retired Army medic wrote, "I wear sweatpants and shake when I talk. A cop once assumed I was drunk. I was just reliving Fallujah. In Chicago, a college student said, "My mom was kicked out of a support group. Not a widow, just a sister. Just a sister." Even within the Navy, anonymous posts surfaced. "We trained to see threats. Maybe it's time we trained to see people again." Keanu never responded to the headlines, but that silence was louder than words. His actions had already started a ripple effect, one that stretched far beyond a single base in San Diego. If this movement touches you, subscribe right now and comment "yes" below. Not for me, not for Keanu, but for the countless invisible heroes who walk among us every day. Months later, the Echo Shield facility unveiled a small brushed steel plaque. No grand speeches, no media frenzy. It simply read, "Dedicated to those who stay when it's hardest, anonymous." Everyone knew who it was. Everyone knew whose silent generosity had funded the program. But Keanu Reeves refused to claim it. He declined interviews, turned down public acknowledgments, and when asked by a major news outlet for comment, he said only, "It's not my story, it's theirs." That answer became iconic. Because in a world desperate for recognition, Keanu reminded us of something deeper. True kindness doesn't demand to be seen. It demands to be lived. The Navy itself changed. Training manuals began to include new lessons about recognition, empathy, and listening. Veterans felt safer stepping into programs like Echo Shield. And Marcus, once a broken young man on the edge, now stood tall as one of the program's strongest voices, carrying forward the lesson Keanu had left him. Keep talking. Someone needs to hear it. And so, from humiliation came transformation. From a single act of arrogance came a movement that reminded the world to see the unseen. In the weeks that followed, the story didn't fade. It deepened. Teachers shared the clip in classrooms. Counselors played it in therapy groups. Veterans watched it in silence, nodding because they understood what words could never explain. Keanu Reeves never commented. He never joined a talk show to retell the story. Never wrote a social media post. His silence became the loudest message. Acts of kindness don't need validation. They stand on their own. Meanwhile, Marcus traveled across the country, speaking about Echo Shield. At every event, people asked him the same question. "What did Keanu Reeves say to save you?" And Marcus always answered honestly, "He didn't say anything, he just listened." That answer resonated everywhere, because in a world drowning in noise, listening had become rare, almost revolutionary. People began to see that maybe the greatest gift wasn't advice, but presence. And in that realization, Keanu's quiet strength became more than a story. It became a movement. Raymond Knox, once arrogant, now carried himself differently. He no longer strutted across the base with clipped orders and sharp tones. Instead, he greeted each new arrival with patience. He asked names. He looked people in the eye. One afternoon, a veteran limped in wearing torn jeans and a stained shirt. A year earlier, Knox would have dismissed him instantly. But now, he walked over, extended a hand, and said, "Welcome. I'm glad you're here." The man's eyes filled with tears. For him, that simple recognition meant more than medals or therapy. It meant being seen. Knox knew he couldn't erase his mistake with Keanu Reeves, but he could honor the lesson. Every day, he carried those words in his chest. Healing only happens when you choose to see people. And so, the officer who once judged by appearances became one of Echo Shield's most dedicated servants. His transformation was proof that even humiliation can birth humility. The Echo Shield story spread far beyond America. In Europe, newspapers highlighted Keanu's humility as a counterbalance to celebrity culture. In Asia, veterans groups translated Marcus's speech into local languages. In Africa and South America, activists adopted the phrase, "You didn't see him," to shine light on forgotten communities. Keanu Reeves had become a symbol, not of Hollywood glamour, but of human dignity. Strangers began performing small acts of kindness anonymously, leaving notes signed only with initials. They didn't seek recognition. They sought connection. Meanwhile, Marcus kept telling his story but always redirected the focus. This isn't about me, or even Keanu. It's about remembering to see the people we overlook. And everywhere, hearts shifted. Because people realized that behind every uniform, behind every hoodie, behind every silent face in a crowd, there might be a story worth hearing. Months later, Marcus returned to the same rooftop where he once nearly ended his life. This time, he wasn't holding pills. He was holding a folded note Keanu had left him. "Keep talking. Someone needs to hear it." He stood at the edge, not with despair, but with gratitude. Looking out at the city lights, Marcus whispered, "I was seen." That was the legacy. Not fame, not applause, but the simple, profound power of being recognized as human. Keanu Reeves had reminded the world that greatness isn't measured by wealth, titles, or fame. It's measured by presence, by the willingness to sit in silence with someone who is breaking, and by choosing to see the invisible. And in that truth, the lesson of Echo Shield would live forever. One morning, months after the ceremony, a Marine found a sealed envelope on his bunk. No sender, no explanation. Inside was a handwritten note. "You don't have to be loud to be remembered. You just have to show up when no one else will." Signed, only, K.R. The Marine held the letter tightly, tears welling in his eyes. It wasn't about celebrity. It wasn't about status. It was about presence. And that was the echo of Keanu Reeves. Not noise, but silence filled with meaning. The letter spread quietly among the ranks. Soldiers folded copies into their wallets. Veterans framed it on their walls. Civilians shared it online. It became a mantra for those who had felt invisible. Because the truth was undeniable. In a world obsessed with applause, sometimes the greatest power lies in the quiet ones, the ones who choose to stay when everyone else walks away. Echo Shield grew stronger. More veterans enrolled. More families found hope. And at the heart of every story, Keanu Reeves' presence lingered like a whisper. Tom Cruise, when asked about that day, said in an interview, "Keanu has always been better than the roles they gave him. He listens. That's his superpower." The clip went viral, not because of Tom Cruise, but because it captured the essence of Keanu. He didn't need to play a hero on screen. He lived it quietly, every day. Marcus kept speaking at ceremonies, carrying the torch his mentor had passed. He often ended with a line that brought audiences to tears. "He didn't teach me how to fight. He showed me how to keep standing." And so, Keanu's silent acts of kindness became immortal. Not in stone monuments, not in flashy tributes, but in the lives of those who carried his lesson forward. And so, what began as humiliation turned into transformation. A Navy officer tried to strip dignity from a man he thought was nobody. Instead, he revealed the deepest truth of all. True greatness doesn't need uniforms, medals, or applause. Keanu Reeves left the base the same way he arrived, quiet, unnoticed, with his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. But the impact of his presence remained. Echo Shield lived on. Veterans found healing. Strangers learned to see the unseen. And the world remembered that the quietest voices often carry the loudest truths. This is the legacy of Keanu Reeves. Not John Wick, not Neo, not the Hollywood icon, but the man who showed us that listening saves lives, humility disarms arrogance, and kindness still has the power to change the world. If this story touched your heart, subscribe right now and share your thoughts in the comments. Because if you felt the weight of Keanu's example, it means you're ready for more stories that remind us what humanity truly means.